Karoline Leavitt was seated at her desk when her assistant poked her head in. "The president is having a casual meeting in the Roosevelt Room. He asked if you could join." Karoline nodded. "I'll be right there." When she entered the room, she saw the president deep in lively conversation with several guests. Among them was a familiar figure, Elon Musk, accompanied by a young boy who could only be his son, X. The president spotted Karoline and waved her over. "Karoline, come meet our guests." She moved through the room, exchanging greetings until she reached Musk, who offered a warm handshake. "This is my son," he said, gesturing toward the boy. The child looked up at her with eyes that seemed far older than his years. His gaze was steady, almost piercing, as if he could see beneath her calm exterior. "Hello," Karoline said, bending slightly to meet him at eye level. "It's nice to meet you." The boy didn't speak, just continued to study her with unnerving focus. Karoline eventually straightened and returned to the adult conversations. Yet throughout the gathering, she couldn't shake the feeling of the boy's gaze on her. Several times she caught him watching her with that same contemplative look. As the meeting drew to a close, Karoline excused herself. There was a stack of briefing papers waiting and a press conference to prepare for. Just as she reached the door, she felt a tug at her sleeve. She turned to find X standing there, holding out a folded piece of paper. "This is for you," he said softly, then quickly returned to his father's side before she could respond. Perplexed, she slipped the note into her pocket. Whatever it was, it would have to wait. Hours later, Karoline finally returned to her office. A dull headache throbbed behind her eyes, and her mother's recent diagnosis, though pushed aside during the day, began to creep back into her thoughts. She sank into her chair, loosening her collar. Her fingers brushed against the folded paper in her pocket. She had forgotten all about it. Expecting a child's drawing or a sweet question, she unfolded the note. But what she read stopped her cold. "God told me that you carry a sadness no one else sees, but He sees everything. He said you're strong because you keep going, even when it's hard. He loves you truly and wants you to know you're safe with Him. You're never too far from His love." Karoline stared at the words, rereading them over and over. Her hands trembled. How could this boy know? The fear of losing her mother, the stress of her position, the loneliness. She had shared none of it with anyone. Faith had once been a pillar of her life, but over the years it had quietly slipped away. Her prayers had become hurried pleas during moments of crisis. And now, this. A message so intimate, so exact, from a child she had never met before. A knock at her door pulled her back to reality. She hastily folded the note and slipped it into her drawer. "Come in," she called, trying to steady her voice. Her assistant entered, placing more briefing materials on her desk. "These just came from State. They need your review before tomorrow." "Thanks," Karoline replied. "Anything else?" "Just a reminder about the 8 p.m. strategy call." After the assistant left, Karoline opened the drawer again and stared at the note. She remembered the boy's eyes, how they had seemed to look right through her. Could it be true? Could a child really have delivered a message from God? She picked up her phone and searched Musk's son online. A few public appearances and notes about his unusual name came up, but nothing explained what had happened in that room. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and calls, but her mind kept drifting back to the boy and his note. By evening, the building was quiet. Karoline sat alone, rereading the words until something inside her gave way. The dam broke. And for the first time in years, Karoline Leavitt cried. The next morning came quickly. She had barely slept, the boy's words echoing through her mind. After a shower and dressing, she slipped the note into her blazer pocket. She couldn't leave it behind. As she applied mascara, her phone buzzed. It was her father. "Dad?" she answered, heart pounding. "The doctors want to try something new," he said, cautiously hopeful. "An experimental treatment. They've seen good results in other patients. Hope, fragile, but present." "When does it start?" she asked. "Next week. The oncologist thinks she's a perfect candidate." After hanging up, Karoline instinctively touched the pocket where the note rested. Coincidence? Or something more? Later that morning, she learned Musk and his son were returning to the White House for a tech initiative event. The news made her pulse quicken, though she wasn't sure why. The press briefing that morning ran smoother than expected. She fielded questions with more clarity than usual. When one reporter challenged the administration on clean energy policy, Karoline delivered a sharp, confident response. "Well done," the communications director told her afterward. "Whatever you're doing differently, keep it up." By lunch, she found herself watching the entrance to the West Wing, waiting. She felt absurd, a senior official hoping for a glimpse of a child. What would she even say? Eventually, Musk and X arrived. Through the conference room glass, she spotted them being escorted down the hall. X looked smaller in the daylight, his hand tucked in his father's. The meeting she was in dragged, and by the time she was free, they had entered the Oval Office. Karoline lingered near her assistant's desk, trying to appear casual. "They'll be in there for a while," her assistant said knowingly. "I'll let you know when they're done." "That's not necessary," Karoline said quickly. "I just need to drop off these polling numbers." An hour passed. The Oval Office doors finally opened. The president emerged, followed by advisors, Musk, and then the boy. X glanced around, then spotted Karoline. He smiled, just a small, knowing smile. She nodded in return. The president noticed her. "Karoline, perfect timing. Join us for lunch in the Roosevelt Room." She couldn't decline. As they walked, she found herself beside X. "Did you read it?" he asked softly. "I did," she whispered, back. "How did you know?" He shrugged. "I just knew. God told me you needed to hear it." The simplicity stunned her. Children often spoke about God with certainty, but this was different. During lunch, amid talk of technology and innovation, she watched the boy. He fidgeted like any child might, but there was a quiet awareness to him. As the group began to disperse, Karoline approached Musk and his son. "I wanted to thank X for his note," she said, looking at the child. "It meant more than I can say." Musk looked down at his son, surprised. "He has a knack for catching people off guard." The boy smiled up at her. "God sees you," he said quietly, "even when you think nobody does." Before she could reply, they were ushered out for their next appointment. She stood there, stunned, feeling as though something deeply significant had just happened, something she couldn't yet explain. The weekend arrived with relentless rain, mirroring Karoline's inner turmoil. Her mother was still sick. Her job still demanded perfection, and the insurance company had just denied coverage for the experimental treatment. She spent Saturday buried in briefing papers. Around noon, her father called. "They won't cover it," he said. "It's experimental, so they're denying the claim." The treatment was impossibly expensive, beyond what her parents could manage, even with her help. She promised to make calls, but the hopelessness in her father's voice left her shaken. The note from X sat on her coffee table. She picked it up, fingers tracing the words. God sees everything. Where was God now? Her mother needed a lifeline, and they couldn't afford it. The political games at work never stopped. She felt powerless. Anger swelled, not at the child, but at the system, the unfairness, and her helplessness. She crumpled the paper in frustration, then quickly, regretfully smoothed it back out. Her White House phone rang, a diplomatic crisis, a press leak, non-stop demands. Something broke inside Karoline. She grabbed her coat and keys, stepping into the pouring rain with no destination in mind. Eventually, her steps led her to the National Cathedral. She hadn't planned to go there. She hadn't been inside a church in years except for ceremonies, but something pulled her in. Inside, the cathedral was quiet. A few tourists wandered, whispering. Karoline slipped into a pew at the back, soaked to the bone, the note still in her hand. The facade of the press secretary faded. What was left was just Karoline, tired, afraid, and aching for peace. She didn't know what to pray for. She didn't even know where to begin. But she looked at the boy's words one more time. "You're never too far from his love." And for the first time in a long while, she believed it might be true.